Pennsylvania, a name whispered through the corridors of early American history. Yet its true story is cloaked in shadows, layered beneath centuries of forgotten struggle and silent lands. One of the original 13 colonies, Pennsylvania is more than just a cornerstone of the United States. It is a land of contradiction, structured yet wild, measured in boundaries, yet boundless in mystery. Roughly rectangular in form, the state stretches nearly 300 miles from the Atlantic-touched east to the rugged frontier of the west, and 150 miles from its serene northern edge near Lake Erie down to the rolling hills shared with Maryland and West Virginia. Nestled within the spine of the Appalachian Mountains lies Harrisburg, the unassuming capital, quiet, enduring, and often overlooked in the grand narrative. But long before colonial borders were drawn or capitals declared, this region whispered in older tongues. When Europeans arrived, they found a land sparsely populated, but ancient in spirit. The Delaware people, Lenni Lenape, held the fertile Delaware Valley, while the Susquehannock thrived along the river that still bears their name. In the shadowy north, echoes of the Iroquois Confederacy lingered, Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, all carving their legacy into the cold forest soil. To the west, the heart of Pennsylvania pulsed with tribal life from the Ohio River Valley. These groups were not mere inhabitants, but stewards of a land that carried memory like stone, silent, strong, and unrelenting. The deeper one explores Pennsylvania, the more the veil lifts. But what lies beneath is not always comforting. It is the weight of time, the hush of battles never written, and the enduring spirit of a place that shaped a nation, quietly, deliberately, and without asking for recognition. Long before the British flag ever flew over Pennsylvania, the mists of the Delaware River carried ships bearing foreign emblems and silent ambition. The first Europeans to carve their presence into this land were not the English, but the Swedes. In 1643, Johann Prince, governor of the little-known colony of New Sweden, journeyed upriver from present-day Wilmington, Delaware. His destination, a wooded island in the river, Tinicum, which he named New Gothenburg. Here, among the quiet marshes and dense forests, the first European capital on Pennsylvania soil emerged. Prince ruled with heavy authority, yet his presence was fragile, a flickering flame against the gathering winds of rivalry. For not long after, other eyes turned to this untamed land. The Dutch, aggressive and unyielding, established trading posts as early as 1647. Their ambitions collided with those of the Swedes, igniting a silent war of influence. In 1650, Peter Stuyvesant, the steely governor of New Netherland, struck. He seized New Sweden, dissolving the fragile dream of a Scandinavian America. But even Dutch dominion would be fleeting. By 1664, the English, unyielding in their pursuit of empire, swept in. New Netherland was claimed in the name of the Duke of York, soon to ascend as King James II. And with that, the soil of Pennsylvania passed once more beneath the new crown, though its identity was far from settled. Then, in 1681, came a transaction not of conquest, but of debt. A king's obligation would birth a colony. Charles II of England, in settling accounts owed to a naval hero, Admiral Sir William Penn, granted the admiral's son, William Penn, a vast, unnamed tract of unoccupied land. On April 2nd, the royal charter was proclaimed, and with it a name emerged, Pennsylvania. Sylvania, meaning woodlands, was Penn's own addition. Penn, for his father. But beneath the name, a vision stirred that was far more radical than anyone expected. Pennsylvania would not be forged by steel or gunpowder. It would be shaped by silence, tolerance, and the dream of a Quaker, who believed peace itself could build a nation. By royal decree, the land was named Pennsylvania, a solemn gift from a king to the son of a revered admiral. But the Charter of 1681 did more than define borders. It marked the beginning of a century cloaked in ambition, uncertainty, and unrest. The forests and rivers of this woodland realm whispered of possibility. But those whispers were soon drowned by the footsteps of settlers and the clashing voices of empires. Pennsylvania's interior, vast and unconquered, lay nestled between English hopes and French determination. Both claimed it. Neither would yield it without blood. It was in these shadowed hills that the young George Washington, stepped onto the stage of history. Still untested, he ventured into the Ohio Valley with a message to the French: withdraw. They did not. The result would shape not only Pennsylvania's fate, but the future of a continent. The French and Indian War, a conflict of smoke and fire, ambush and betrayal, raged across the western wilderness from 1754 to 1763. Here, in Pennsylvania's deep woods and along its rivers, alliances were forged and shattered. English General Edward Braddock led a force deep into hostile land, only to fall to a devastating ambush. A grim reminder that European tactics held no guarantee in this unfamiliar terrain. As blood stained the soil and settlements braced for attack, Native American resistance grew ever more fierce. They did not go quietly into the night, but once the cannon ceased and treaties were signed, another battle began, this time not with musket or tomahawk, but with dissatisfaction. The Proclamation of 1763, issued by the Crown to halt westward expansion, intended to appease the tribes still reeling from war. But for Pennsylvanians, it was a chain, one they refused to wear. Defiant settlers poured over the Alleghenies. Fort Pitt, once Fort Duquesne, jewel of French resistance, became the beating heart of expansion. A gateway, a promise, a warning. Trade flowed, settlements multiplied, but beneath it all, unrest brewed like a storm beneath the mountain fog. The people of Pennsylvania were beginning to see clearly. Their loyalty to Britain was conditional and fading. By the eve of the American Revolution, Pennsylvania stood not on the edge of history, but at its very heart. Philadelphia, the state's proud and rising city, had transformed into a crucible where the fate of empires would be tested and the dream of a republic would be born. In 1774 and again in 1775, delegates from the colonies gathered under its watchful steeples. There, within its halls, voices rang out, not yet in unison, but in resolve. The First and Second Continental Congresses met, debated, and defied. Then came the thunderclap, the Declaration of Independence, penned and signed in Philadelphia. Ink on parchment, treason to a king, a covenant with a dangerous future. After the war's smoldering end, Philadelphia briefly wore the crown of a fragile union, the capital of the short-lived Confederation, and later, the cradle of the fledgling United States government. But even as the ink dried on foundational documents, Pennsylvania was already pushing forward. In 1790, the state shed its revolutionary skin. A new constitution brought structure and strength, a bicameral legislature, and a governor with real power. Roads lengthened like arteries across the land. Canals carved silent paths through wilderness. Iron rails cut into hillsides, and steam roared through valleys. Progress came not in whispers, but in hammers, wheels, and steel. The Philadelphians, frugal yet visionary, fueled this rise. Their precision and restraint built a state that was not just surviving, but dominating. Pennsylvania became a titan of commerce. By the 1820s, coal, black gold buried deep in ancient stone, was drawn from the earth in staggering quantities. Hard and soft veins alike were tapped by companies hungry for heat, power, and profit. Then in 1859, at a quiet spot in Titusville, Edwin Drake pierced the soil, and the world's first oil well gushed forth, heralding a new industrial age. The state's mills and factories surged. Ships, textiles, tobacco, lumber, but above all, iron and steel. Forged in fire, Pennsylvania's strength became the backbone of a growing nation. And yet, amid this prosperity, a deeper reckoning stirred. The Pennsylvania Emancipation Act of 1781 had pledged the slow, deliberate end of slavery within the state. Still, Pennsylvania's southern border, the Mason-Dixon line, would come to bear a heavier burden. It marked not just geography, but ideology. Freedom to the north, chains to the south. When civil war erupted, Pennsylvania once again became a vital ground of decision. Its fields, rivers, and roads groaned under the weight of armies. And at Gettysburg, the storm broke in full. There, beneath gray skies and the roar of cannon, the Union carved its greatest victory against the advance of Robert E. Lee. But victory came at a terrible cost, and its echoes never truly faded. When the cannons of the Civil War fell silent, Pennsylvania did not rest. It surged forward into fire, into steel, into the smoke-choked dawn of a new age. The war's end marked the beginning of relentless growth. Industry boomed. Immigrants poured in. Towns swelled into cities. From the late 19th century into the early 20th, Pennsylvania stood as the second most populous state in the nation, its mills and foundries feeding a hungry America. In 1873, a fourth state constitution was passed, ambitious and forward-looking. Yet even that document would evolve, amended again and again until 1968, when it was reshaped so profoundly that it earned a new name altogether, the Constitution of 1968. Pennsylvania, ever adaptive, was rewriting its own rules. In 1898, the flames of the past took physical form. The old Capitol in Harrisburg was lost to fire. But from that loss rose a new vision. Construction began almost immediately, and by 1908, a new seat of power stood complete, a capital worthy of a state that had so often stood at the center of American destiny. Then came global conflict. In 2 world wars, Pennsylvania's mighty engines roared back to life. Its heavy industries became the arsenal of democracy, producing the iron, steel, and machinery that fueled victory on distant shores. The state became a forge once more, its rivers running beside factories lit by the urgency of war. But time, like steel, bends under pressure. After World War II, the world changed. And so did the winds of industry. Foreign competition sharpened its edge, and by the mid-1960s, the once invincible factories of Pennsylvania began to fall silent. The state, once crowned with smoke and iron, was now labeled part of a rust belt, a graveyard of broken machines and vanished certainty. Yet Pennsylvania did not crumble. It transformed. New industries rose from the wreckage: technology, healthcare, education, and finance. The service sector grew, nimble and fast. Innovation took root in cities that once echoed with hammers. A state that had been built on coal and steel now looked toward silicon and science. Pennsylvania's past is not just written in textbooks. It's embedded in every cobblestone street, every smokestack silhouette, every mountain trail. This is not merely the story of a state. It is the unfolding legend of a nation within a nation. A place where revolutions ignited, where battles were won, where the old constantly gives way to the new. If you've felt the echoes of history through Pennsylvania's journey, don't let them fade. Subscribe to History Love for more stories that uncover the hidden layers of the past. Like, share, and comment below. What part of Pennsylvania's story speaks to you most? The past is never really gone, not here. And we're just getting started.